The town of Plainville. Established in 1721 at the geographical center of Connecticut.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town Council meeting. Tonight is Monday, October 7th, 7 p.m. We will lead off with the pledge. Councilman Carrier, if you will lead us.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have any presentations this evening, but we have two items under our public hearing section, so I will ask our town clerk to please read the notice.
Thank you. Notice is hereby given that the Plainville Town Council will hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. on Monday, October 7th, 2019, in the council chambers of the Municipal Center, 1 Central Square, to consider the following. 1, sewer user rate for the period November 1st, 2019 to October 31st, 2020. And 2, proposed amendments to an ordinance entitled Flood Damage Prevention. Copies of the proposed rates and amendments are available at the town clerk's office. Dated at Plainville, Connecticut, this 3rd day of October.
Thank you very much. Before we begin either of these public hearings, I'm going to ask the town manager to give us a brief overview of each one of them. Mr. Lee, would you, I guess we're starting with our sewer user fee that we'll be voting on.
Sure, if you like.
Thank you.
The recommendation of town staff is that the user charges be increased by 2% for next year. That's based upon a spreadsheet that's up on the screen right now, and the council members received this spreadsheet at your last meeting. What we're proposing is in yellow. The year we're in 2020. It's not 2020 today, but at the end of the sewer user fiscal year, which really goes from November 1st each year to October 31st. So that's why we use 2020. Based upon where we stand today, and we've looked out through 2026 in looking at our projection. We're projecting that once we get past the initial increase of operating expenses because of the new phosphorus requirements, and once that goes into operation, we're anticipating that expenses will increase an average of 2% a year, so we're using that for our analysis. So the expenses increase by 2% going forward. Once we get past next year, which is in blue, you'll see where the blue square, which is right here, you'll see where we're anticipating our total expenses will increase by somewhere in the area of almost $1 million, $900 and some odd thousand based upon pretty even split between and let me see if I can bring this up a little. In the blue box here, you'll see where we're anticipating that the paying back on the capital cost over 20 years, the loan amount from the state, somewhere around $452,000, and the operating expenses being somewhere about $500,000. So we're expecting that the large increase to the to our expenses will happen in 2021. And going forward from there, will rise slightly going over time. One of the key numbers that is this gain loss for the fiscal year. We're anticipating that our fund balance will increase by about $500,000 in the current fiscal year, 2020. But then you can see that over time, as we begin to absorb the large increase in the expenses expected in 2021, that we're going to use that $500,000 in 2021, use an additional $500,000 in 22, and going forward, you could see that fairly consistent, drawing down on the fund balance. Going out to 2026, again in this blue box, we're anticipating that based on this plan of 2% going forward, through 2026, that the fund balance will go from approximately $4.45 million down to $1.3 million. And you may recall that probably a year or so ago when we had discussions of the, a year or so ago, the council, based upon some recommendations of the town staff, felt that once we get stabilized with this project, that a prudent fund balance for the user account is 3 months worth of operating expenses, and we're anticipating that if we get out to 2026 and these numbers play out the way they do, a $1.3 million unassigned fund balance would translate to just a little bit over that 3 months of expenses, and that's on the bottom blue where we're estimating of 3 months worth of expenses in 2026. And remember, we are projecting going out many years, and certainly a lot of things can happen in between. But that number is $1,208,000. So this is a planned drawdown of the fund balance, and while having a relatively small increase to user charges going forward. Certainly, this is significantly lower than what was projected, not only last year, but certainly even the year before, the year before that. Part of it is that the project came in, under what we anticipate as far as the budget is concerned, and part of it is people are paying their user charges as well. So we've made out fairly well as far as on the revenue side is concerned. So so that's the basis for our recommendation. And again, this changes each year. The commitment, any vote is just for next year, and then we recalculate things for following years. Certainly, if things look better next year or are tracking the way they are right now, then then this stays in place. But you have to realize that we're just this is just why we're recommending this going forward, and we at this point in time. What that means, as far as the user charge rate is concerned, is that the minimum charge, great majority of people pay the minimum charge, would increase by $8. That's a 2% increase from $399.76 to $407.76. Well users would go up approximately $10. And the others are based on, we have some people that we do charge based on flow. So that is the recommendation with respect to the user charges. I will tell you that our user charges for sewer user charges are pretty much middle of the road in comparison to the rest of the state. Certainly the smaller systems generally have a higher average user rate. Some of the larger systems have a smaller average user rate. They have more people that can pay for it. Some wastewater treatment plants haven't upgraded. Some of them haven't been required to upgrade. Others have upgraded, so it's all over the place. But we're somewhere in the middle as far as user charges are concerned, based upon our analysis.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if you want me to touch on briefly on the ordinance.
Yes, if you would do that now, then we'll just proceed from one public hearing to the next. So if you don't mind doing that as well.
We have a flood prevention ordinance, which is required by FEMA to have that in place with respect to those properties that are located either in the floodway or the floodplain, the 100-year, in the floodplain being the 100-year storm, which we've talked about a little bit during our work session. So FEMA requires us to have this ordinance in place. And based upon some of their technical analysis of our ordinance and us, that they change over time, we have to make some technical amendments to our ordinance, which is, which you have in your package meeting information for this evening, and I think we passed it out at the last meeting as well. We really don't have too much choice in the matter as far as, we're really following kind of a model that's set by FEMA. Certainly if there's any technical, there's a lot of technical changes. John Bossie's here, he could go through them if necessary. I'm not sure that it is, so.
Okay.
We'll try to answer questions if somebody has technical questions, but, it just has to do with some of the changes. For example, FEMA's requiring that they establish an elevation for the 100-year flood. So they they can tell you where you're, if you're in a 100-year flood, what the elevation is that flood's going to reach, that level's going to reach. And in the past, if you had damage to say your basement was below that, your first floor elevation was above it, and your basement got flooded, it used to be that under their requirements, you could replace the oil tank in the basement, you could replace your electrical, in the basement. Now they're requiring that it be above the flood elevation, the elevation of the flood. I think it has to be 2 foot above it or something along those lines, where in the past they had something different. And the reason for that is because the federal government provides flood insurance for those people who are in the 100-year flood zone or floodplain, and they want to prevent some of the insurance, people using that insurance repeatedly over time, so to keep the insurance rates as reasonable as possible. So that's really the reason for FEMA requiring it, because the federal government is providing the flood insurance rates and I guess supplement for that program. So.
Okay, thank you. Having said that, I will open up the first public hearing, which will deal with a sewer user fee of 2% increase. Does anybody wish to speak to the public hearing regarding the sewer user fee? Please come to actually to this podium here. State your name and address if anybody wishes to speak to the first public hearing. Mr. Kislick?
John Kislick, 65 Forestville Avenue. I still have that same gripe that I know you're not going to change with the sewer assessment. It's a single family household, one person, pays that same flat rate as everybody else. I mean, as say a 3-family household. And I think that's not fair. But we went over this before and you're not going to change it, but I just had to voice my opinion on that. The other thing, as far as 2%, I think that's great, because we were expecting 4. So like I said at last meeting, I mean, that's good. I'm glad, and I hope it stays the same or goes down. And, it went from $399.76, and when you go up even another 24 cents, you cross that threshold of another $100. So it makes it seem like it's a lot more money. But I talked to some seniors, and they're in the same boat as me, retired on a fixed income. And we said, well, $8, it's not too much. We probably only have to sacrifice a couple of meals, and we'll be able to survive. So with that being said, I don't have any problem with a 2% increase for the $8. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, just one item. Mr. Kislick, for a 3-family home, we would charge them three units. If you're talking about a larger family, that's different. So I wasn't sure what you were.
3 people in the family.
Okay, all right. And I will point out that the council has formed a committee and is looking at and reevaluating that whole user charge system, and as it relates to the minimum charge as well, and trying to take into account some of the things that you've pointed out. It's relatively complicated, and I know we're working through it. Hopefully it'll be in place for next year, but of course there'll be some winners and losers with respect to that, and I'm sure that'll be an interesting discussion as well.
I'd be a loser.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. Does anybody else wish to speak to the public hearing regarding the sewer user fee? Yes, sir. Mr. Edmond?
Joel Edmond, 63 Hollyberry Lane. Going back 45 years, when I bought my first house, the sewer fee was $17 a year. I mean, with obviously inflation and everything, and the extra personnel, and whatever, it's somewhat understandable, but that's what it was 45 years ago, and I'm just bringing that up. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Edmond. Does anybody else wish to speak? Joanne?
You want the name and address and everything?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Joanne Edmond, 166 West Main Street. The way I look at it is it's another form of tax. And does it have to be that high for a single occupant in one house? I mean, I hope this is what your meeting is going to be, your committee meeting is going to evaluate one person versus how many living in a household. You know that especially the transients in town, they're doubling up, and I think this is a form of spreading the wealth. When you tax everything is so high, and that's a form of socialism. So, I mean, that's something to consider. I mean, our taxes are high enough. You know, I'm going to talk about it later. $1 million to $2 million every year, and we've got more and more people coming into this town, and you're trying to get more businesses. It's just, I think it's just another big tax. Take it easy on the folks. Come on.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak on the public hearing regarding the sewer user fee? Step up. Mr. Albert.
Dave Albert, Hollyberry Lane, 56, sorry. Is there a way for the town to send a email for the second payment in May? I think I've missed that like 8 years in a row or something. I always get the colored paper that comes in the mail.
I know. I do recall at one point there was an email list that would go out as reminders, but I do not know if that's still the case.
Yeah, you can sign up you could sign up online, and they'll send you several reminders before in May. So
okay, and I'll probably still miss it, but okay, thank you. That'd be perfect. All right, so sign up.
You can sign up online. If not, you can call the tax office, and they'll walk you through it, or they'll put you on it, and then you'll get several emails.
Thank you.
Rather than mailing it to everyone, you know, which is an expense, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak to the sewer user fee public hearing? One last chance. All right. Thank you for your comments. I will close that public hearing, and I will open it up to our amendment to the flood damage prevention ordinance. Mr. Lee just gave us a little overview about the FEMA requirements, so I would ask if anybody wishes to speak to this public hearing, please come forward, state your name and address. No? Okay. If that's the case, I'll close the public hearing. We're moving on to our next item of business. Minutes of our previous meeting. May I have a motion to approve?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion to approve the minutes of September 16th, 2019 regular meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, changes, or corrections to those minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Number 4, announcements and reports. Does anybody have any announcements to make?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, just wanted to report on the Saturday, September 28th, Pequabic River Cleanup that was sponsored by the Conservation Commission. I was able to participate. There was a great group of volunteers, and I hope you've seen some of the publicity about it that's appeared in the newspapers. And I'm sure they'll be doing a springtime river cleanup as well. And I'll be attending the monthly meeting of the Conservation Commission this week, and also the Committee on Aging. Meeting, one of those weeks where we have all three in the same week.
I know, you're a busy person.
And library trustees tomorrow night. I just wanted to note on the libraries that I'm sure you've seen in the newspapers too, they are continuing to do a lot of programs on the really wonderful 24/7 free databases that they subscribe to. In fact, they're all 24/7 really, except Ancestry.com is the only one that you have to use on site. And I think on Saturday they did one on what sounds to be a very exciting new database, Jobs Now. It's live online coaching for resumes and career planning. And I believe they're doing another program on October 16th on that. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Rosemary. Anybody else have anything to report? I just have a couple of things. First of all, I want to remind everybody that Plainville is hosting its annual Pumpkin Fest on Saturday, October 19th from 4 to 8 p.m. in our downtown area. There will be vendors and food trucks and pumpkins, and there's a pumpkin decorating contest for which prizes will be given. We also have a new prize category. If you haven't noticed, we have our giant pumpkin in front of the Municipal Center, and the Pumpkin Committee has decided to host another little mini contest for those who want to guess the weight of that pumpkin and the circumference of the pumpkin. And we're going to be giving out prizes to whomever guesses the closest to either one of those categories. So I think it's kind of fun. I have no idea how much that pumpkin weighs or how big around it is, but we do have the information from the gentleman that grew the pumpkin. And so that's a new addition to our offering, but there will be games for children, there will be vendors, there will be food, there will be a parade, there will be music. So we're really looking forward to another successful event. So it is October 19th, Saturday, from 4 to 8 p.m. One more item I did want to report on is a week ago Friday, the Big Y in Plainville had a grand reopening of their store. If you haven't been in there recently, or at least over the summer, they did a complete redo on the inside of that store. It's brighter, it's differently organized, it's got a lot of new features. It also right now has a self-checkout area, which didn't exist before. So the owners of the store thought that the Plainville Big Y is a very busy store for them, and it needed a little refreshing. So they did do that, and they had a grand reopening. And I learned a little bit about the owners of the store. It's owned by the Damore family. The store was incorporated in 1936 by two brothers in Massachusetts. The headquarters is currently located in Springfield, Massachusetts. They own 70 stores and they employ 12,000 people throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts. So it is a family-owned operation, unlike some of the larger grocery chains that we're familiar with across the country. The family was there. Robert Lee was there along with economic development. Shirley was there. So it was a very interesting learning experience for me about Big Y, and the way they got their name was also pretty interesting. When they built their original store, it was a very tiny little space between some other buildings up in Springfield, and at some point they decided they needed more room, so they purchased a building, and the building ended up being in the middle of two roads that were a Y. So thus came the name of the Big Y. And it remains the same today. They were very gracious folks, and they really did a wonderful job reintroducing Big Y to the community, and they had a lot of little festive action going on. So it has done a great job over there. It's a very busy place, and you know, they're happy to be part of Plainville. They're happy to be part of our community. They support the Pumpkin Fest. They donate food and water and all kinds of things. So they really have become part of who we are. So it was interesting to finally meet the people that own the Big Y. So that was my experience there. Does anybody else have anything to report? Nope. Okay. We'll move on. We have a few appointments and resignations. The first one.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion to appoint Felipe Brochu, 24 Hemingway, to the Plainville Fire Department as a probationary firefighter.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion to accept with regret the resignation of Zachary Bishop from the Plainville Fire Department.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Do we have any other appointments tonight that we didn't have on our list? Nope.
No.
Okay. All right. Moving on. Report of the town attorney. Good evening. Do we have any news tonight? Okay. Nice to see you. All right. On to the report of the town manager. Mr. Lee?
Thank you. I have a couple of items, the first of which is the Small Cities Grant Award. The governor's office recently announced that the town was awarded a $1.5 million grant to make improvements to 80 senior housing units managed by the Plainville Housing Authority. The improvements would involve all the units in the Centerview Village and Woodmore Manor complexes. The grant would be used to replace existing bathtubs with walk-in showers and make ADA improvements to 5 kitchens. The monies would come from the Community Development Block Grant Small Cities Program. This is a competitive program, and Plainville was only one of 13 towns in Connecticut to receive such a grant. Town staff worked with the Housing Authority to put together a very detailed application, and I want to thank Lisa Mateer and Cal Harberger from my office who led the effort to work with the Housing Authority to finalize the application. It is anticipated that the improvements will be started in early 2020. So that was good news. We tried last year, we weren't successful this year. We were. So we're happy about that, and I know the Housing Authority is as well. Next item I have is the Department of Transportation Property Acquisition. This has to do with the Tomlinson Avenue Bridge. The town is moving closer to replacing the Tomlinson Avenue Bridge over the Quinnipiac River. For some of us that have been here for a while, this has been going on for a while. Town staff is anticipating that the replacement could occur next summer. As part of the project, the state DOT would like to acquire from the town a small parcel of land. This parcel is located to the north of Tomlinson and includes a portion of the river as well. The proposed acquisition totals 402 square feet. Additionally, the DOT is requesting 2 easements from the town. The first easement is 122 square feet and is located north of Tomlinson and would be used to install riprap on the slope to protect the road. And the second easement totals 6,333 square feet, would be a construction easement to allow for the reconstruction of the bridge. Although the town is expected to manage the project, the state DOT is requiring the acquisition and easements because federal funds are involved. When the project is completed, the state will return the property to the town. So they're asking us to give them an easement, let them acquire the property, and when it's all said and done, what they're going to give it back to us. For doing that, they'll give us $500.
That's very generous of them.
Go figure. Anyhow, there is an item under new business. I did call them and I said, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. And they told me, well, yes, you're right, but you know, that's just the way we do things. And rather than argue with them, I figured I'd try to see if the council would go for that. There is an item under new business regarding this request from the DOT. If approved, town staff will bring this matter to the Planning and Zoning Commission for an 8-24 referral whenever there's a involves land. We have to at least get the planning and zoning to at least give a referral as well. So, so there is an item under new business regarding this, and I know it's somewhat technical, but that's what they're asking us to do. The next item I have is the Robertson Airport runway repair. A recent inspection of the Robertson Airport runway revealed cracks that have developed in the pavement. Many of the cracks were occurring along the cold joints between the sections of pavement and are considered normal wear and tear. These run basically the length of the runway. There were also several larger cracks that run across the runway that appear to be located over underground utilities. At their meeting held on September 23rd, the Aviation Commission reviewed the issue with the runway. Their unanimous recommendation is that the cracks be repaired before the winter months to avoid potential damage from the water getting under the pavement. Various options were reviewed. The Aviation Commission determined that the best course of action at this time is to crack fill the problem areas. There was some test pits that were done out there as well. A proposal was received from Santoro Inc. of Newington to crack seal the runway at a cost of $19,375. Monies for this work would come from the Airport Operating Fund. The Airport Operating Fund currently has a balance of $550,000 plus or minus. Santoro is being recommended because they have done similar type of work at other airports, and they're available to perform the work in a timely manner before the winter months. There is an item under new business regarding this recommendation. Next item I have is to reschedule the 2nd October Town Council meeting. The next Town Council meeting is scheduled for October 21st. On that date, I will be attending the International City Managers Conference in Nashville, recognizing that the Town Council has historically canceled the meeting scheduled for the night before Election Day. I am suggesting that the Town Council cancel the October 21st and November 4th meetings and schedule a meeting in between on October 28th. If the Town Council agrees to this recommendation, town staff will make the appropriate notifications. There's no action you need necessarily to take unless you feel that.
Is everybody okay with that? Do you understand we're canceling 2 meetings and we're going to have one at the end of October?
Right in the middle.
Right.
Okay, so there will be the one meeting. It will just be a week later, and you historically have canceled the one before
And we will
election night.
cancel the one that's the night before election?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Next item I have is what I'm calling town manager library gatherings, although there are some in the audience who may call it something different. Last spring, I held some gatherings at the library for residents to stop by and discuss with me any issues of interest. I found these gatherings productive, and it gave people the opportunity to have more in-depth discussions regarding current projects and issues. Residents had the opportunity to hear from their fellow neighbors as well. I have scheduled another round of gatherings for Thursday, November 14th, Wednesday, December 4th, and Thursday, January 9th. All these sessions will run from 6 to 8 p.m. at the library near the fireplace, and we'll be getting word out as we get closer to those dates about, trying to advertise and at least let people know that at least I will make myself available for anybody who wants to stop in and have a discussion and about any items of interest. I'm also looking to perhaps invite special guests, 1 or 2. I'm not going to talk about who they may be in advance because they have not acknowledged whether they can attend or not. So we may expand the people, at least the people who might attend from the town. So just announcing that in advance, and that's all I have under my report. I'd like to turn it over to Scott for some happenings, and then we'll be prepared to answer any questions or comments you may have for us.
Okay.
Good evening.
Hi, Scott.
The first item I have is in regards to the Plainville 150th anniversary celebration. This past Saturday was the Plainville 150th Historic Bus Tours that took place every half an hour from the Municipal Center. Approximately 120 individuals attended, which meant that most of the buses were filled every half an hour going throughout. These buses had guided tours that were giving an in-depth background on some of the town's historic sites. The Plainville 150th Committee would like to thank DACO for donating the trolley that they had, along with the Senior Center for providing the bus as well. Moving on to the happenings for the Senior Center, on Thursday, October 10th at 1 p.m., they have a course on how to prevent complications of diabetes, learn how to control your blood sugar with positive lifestyle changes, find out foods you can eat that are low in sugar without giving up taste, presented by Berlin Visiting Nurse Association, and this program is free. And on Friday, October 25th at 10 a.m., they have an assistive devices discussion. Do you have knee, hip, or back pain? Do balance issues? Have you worried about falling? Physical therapy and sports medicine centers will be at the Senior Center on October 25th to discuss a selection and uses of assistive devices. If you or a loved one needs to use a walker, cane, or a wheeled device, this is the perfect course for you. They will discuss how to select the correct device, the appropriate size, and how to use each device properly. They will also have time for specific questions and device fitting. This program is free as well. They just ask that you call the Senior Center to register at 860-747-5728. That's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Does anybody have any questions or comments for either Robert or Scott with their report tonight?
Madam Chair, I just have
a
question. How old is the paving on the runway? Is that did it get paved when the town acquired the airport?
No, several years afterwards. I think it's 2012 or 13.
It was, okay.
Yeah, so it's good 6, 7 years.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I too would really like to commend the staff that worked on the grant for the Housing Authority project. And, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the Senior Center also did a successful grant proposal for a dial-a-ride vehicle. And both of these, from what I understand, are highly competitive programs. And I've written grants, and I know it's most of the time it's not something you complete during the normal work day, but it really usually goes beyond, and a lot of effort goes into it. And I just want to commend all the staff that has written both of those two really major grants and that were successful in receiving. And wonderful news.
I agree. Thank you for mentioning that, Rosemary. Please extend our thanks to everyone involved, because it certainly will help out the folks that are going to benefit from those improvements.
Will do.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Robert or Scott? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Moving on, we are now in the public comment section of our meeting. During this time, we invite the public to come to the podium, probably this one here again. You will be given 3 minutes to speak to the council. Please state your name and address. I have nobody signed up, so I'm going to open it up. Does anybody wish to speak to the council? No? Okay. John?
John Kislick, 65 Forest Hill Avenue. Good evening, Town Council.
Hello.
And Scott. I hate being first. I could have some humor later on after all the heavy-duty stuff. I suppose I can talk about a personal issue at the meeting, being on...
Depends what it is, John.
It's political.
Oh.
You know, I was getting ready for bulk pickup and went under my porch, and I found my signs from 2 years ago to run for town council as a write-in candidate. And I said, wow, I love recycling. So I decided to run as a candidate. I registered with the Secretary of State, and I figured, you know, the town council, you have two political parties, you have Wayne Fish, and we don't really have anybody from this side, and I figure I'm from this side. So I figure we mix it up a little bit. The last election, I got 144 write-in votes that people actually checked the box and signed my name. And I think that was pretty good for a first time as a write-in candidate. I don't think that's been done in Plainville. Carol gave me the information. It was quite a few years back that one guy registered, and he got no votes, so he didn't even vote for himself. But the way I look at it, all I have to do is get about 1,000 more votes than that, and I can be in the same ballpark as you guys this year. So I'm glad they have that opportunity with the state to be there. Let's see if we all have some fun. I have nothing against anybody on the council, the parties, or anybody. It's just, it's an opportunity, so I'm going to go for it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for the information. Does anybody else wish to speak to the council that has not done so? Roberta?
Roberta Loria, 18 Perrin Road. For the benefit of Carol and Town Council minutes, I oppose any trail or alignment that will be on, next to, or have an impact on any neighborhood in Plainville, especially Perrin Road. This past weekend, my family and I attended the historical bus tour that was offered for the 150th anniversary. I invited an elderly neighbor to come with us. I was a bit surprised by their response, and I will paraphrase, in which they essentially said, the leadership of this town is greedy and selfish and destroys things in this town and is not worth attending. I didn't understand that statement. So my family and I went on the bus tour. Most of the tour talked about what used to be and what we had for buildings, except for a few things we still have, like the cemeteries and churches. My family and I were a bit taken back by the amount of what we lost and what was replaced eventually by retail. It took us almost 100 years before a woman by the name of Ruth Hummel came forward and started the Historical Society. It's interesting to note that this trail was not brought up until after she died. She would not be happy with what she's seeing being done to this town. Based on past behavior of town councils and town employees, I can understand why you would think it is okay to shove this trail down our throats for nothing more than greed and selfishness. The question you need to ask yourself is if this trail you're forcing down certain residents is the legacy you want to be known for. Based on stories we talked about at the Historical Society, People will remember this legacy for generations. There is a saying that people do what they are taught and know until they are shown and taught better. Then they do better. The question to you is, have you really bothered to listen and learn what you are causing to others in terms of pain and aggravation? None of you will be impacted by this, by the way. And is that what you want your legacy to be?
Does anybody else wish to speak that has not done so? Mr. Edmond?
Joel Edmond, 63 Hollyberry Lane. No rail, no trail, and no thank you. Tim Malone, a primary important trail organizer, finally walked the Mule Hall towpath a while back. I actually saw him as I watch what happens back there in the wetlands beyond my house. After much dissent by myself and Carrie Zach, Carol Nicolucci, Barbara Martin, all homeowners whose houses back up to the old Plainville Canal, were very pleased that he said here up at the podium that he agreed that the trail, if passed, should not be on or next to the towpath, but easterly approximately 150 feet on the high side of the wetlands. And there would be no bridges to be constructed, and away from the homeowners that reside on Hollyberry Lane and Condale Lane. Whether this was just a situation to appease and quiet us is suspect due to rumors and survey markings suggesting the opposite, and back to the Mule Hall towpath that is basically only about 50 feet away from the local homeowners' houses. Words from Senator Martin this past Tuesday stated that the trail is definitely going to happen unless the town council disapproves, and why would they not approve, even though many townspeople have voiced their disapproval as a majority to no avail. People, bikers and hikers, walkers, and whoever are getting through town just fine without all the negative impactments to local homeowners, traffic, devastation of trees, and invasion of local wetlands. By the way, our Wetlands Commission has no say as to the negative impact the trail would impose. So, once again, I implore that the town council seriously consider disapproving the trail as it now seems to be constructed with I have no problem with the original rails to trails idea of a straightforward trail to New Haven, but to circumvent an abortion of an elongated, I'm almost done, elongated trail through local neighborhoods and roads in Norton Park and wetlands is definitely ridiculous in my estimation. Hello, is anyone listening? No rail, no trail, and no thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak that has not done so? Anyone else wish to speak that has not done so? Joanne?
Joanne Edmond, 166 West Main Street. I strongly oppose Alignment C and any other alignment that would negatively impact Perron Road, Pierce Street, Hemingway, Broad, Hemingway, into the park and the Mule Hall Trail. And in accordance with that, this is for the record, Carol. Recently, I had a telephone conversation with Scott Bushy, and I suggested to him that he, oh geez, I hate to read these. I suggested to him that if they had to put a trail in, please designate it to Route 10 on as the official trail, as it is already marked. It's a straightaway, and bicycles like to go straight on hard surfaces. He said, oh, but it is not safe for families and children. So I said, is it safe to go squiggly wiggly through the trail that runs through lonely, wooded, and swampy areas that might be subjected to horrific acts that have already happened on other trails? And he really didn't have an answer to that statement. As a matter of fact, if you, God, I can't even read this. As a matter of fact, if you persist in pursuing this trail for, I have a name for it. This is what I'm leading up to. I have a name for this trail. I'm going to call it the MURR, M-U-R-R trail. And it stands for murder, rape, and robbery, because it's not a good thing to have here. It's going to be costly. It's going to cost the taxpayers money. It's going to be a budget line item, and it's not going to be beneficial to the people. Again, I talked about socialistic. It's a spreading of the wealth. Again, like the sewer raising of taxes, the sewer fee. It's not a good thing. I had more to say, but I guess you're going to stop me. Just one thing. This town used to be a very, very beautiful town, and the comments about the historic trip through town showing what used to be. Isn't that sad? Here, this used to be here. This beautiful Trumbull Mansion used to be here. This other Trumbull Mansion used to be here. And greedy and selfish developers and politicians have ruined this town, as far as I'm concerned. It is no longer a beautiful town. And that's a really sad thing in my book. My father would be horrified at the way that, and Ruth Hummel, at the way this town it looks now. It seems like you're trying to squeeze every bit and develop squeeze out every piece of open land and develop it and commercialize it, and it's for what? You still raise the taxes $1 to $2 million every year. And think about that. You know, an election is coming up. Remember in November. I know I am.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak that has not done so?
I'd like to know what you all are thinking. And
Does anybody else wish to speak?
For the trail. So remember in November.
Jussie Sally, 26 Ashford Road in Plainville. I, too, on Saturday, was lucky enough to attend the historic tour of Plainville. And I was actually on the bus with Roberta. And I had a different experience, and I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. I grew up here, and I thought I knew a lot about this town. I was very wrong. I was lucky enough to have some conversations with members of the Historical Society, and I learned about things that, yes, used to be here, but I also learned about the wonderful history that Plainville does have. What I did find, though, is one piece of property was torn down for our highway system, but most things were torn down because, unfortunately, they were beyond repair. And that is a very sad thing, but sometimes things we can't save. But I want to say that the members of the Historical Society I did get to talk to taught me a lot about our town. We got to share stories with other bus members, including my own mother who grew up here, and it was very educational. So I want to thank the committee, the 150th committee, for such a great job. The tour was beautiful. It was a gorgeous day. DACO, the trolley was wonderful. It really added to the experience. So I want to thank them, and I want to thank the members of the Historical Society that shared all the wonderful stories. It was really nice. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody, Joanne? Joanne.
She turns around and looks right at me.
Joanne. We don't do that. Does anybody else wish to speak that hasn't done so? Dave?
She's picking up bad habits from that one.
Dave Albert, 56 Highbury Lane. I have a quick question on the recycling. And because I cut my finger cutting a cardboard today, are we still dumping the recycle? Like, I know we have a problem with they're not buying it, and we're actually out of pocket on it. So I wanted to make sure that it's actually worth us to continue recycling.
Do you want me to answer?
Well, we are still collecting recycling materials, and we are still bringing them to a facility that takes them. However, it's costing a lot more than it used to.
I guess my question is are we saving, is the town saving anything by doing all this recycling?
We're required by state statute to recycle, so we don't have a choice.
Yeah,
we're not saving any money.
Yeah, I know that.
We're not saving any money.
Okay, all right.
But we're required to do it by state
You are
statute.
required, so, okay.
We don't have
I
a choice.
understand. Yeah, I understand. Has there been any thought to the other thing I had was the recycling, like Bristol has the green bins for yard waste products?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Why is that?
It's expensive.
It is expensive?
Costs money.
Okay, so your point is that it...
Nobody
I
really
guess I was
pushed for
thinking,
it.
what's that?
Really hasn't been a demand for it.
Okay.
Every once in a while, one person comes forward and says, hey, why don't we do this?
Okay, that's me.
Okay, maybe two.
Okay.
It's not a big issue, and, you know.
Okay, so...
There are options in town.
Yeah, so what's the view for the future for recycling, as far as you see?
I don't have a crystal ball. I really don't know.
Okay.
State is optimistic that the markets are going to come back.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I share
Agree with that, yeah.
view, but...
No, yeah, I hear you, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak that has not done so?
More definitive answers.
Anybody else wish to speak that has not done so? All right. Thank you all for your comments. We'll move on to the rest of our agenda. We are moving into our new business section of our meeting, so we're going to have some things that we need approved. May I have a motion for item number 1?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion for the Town Council acting as the Water Pollution Control Authority to increase the sewer user rate by 2% for the period November 1st, 2019 to October 31st, 2020.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I'm pleased to know that we're going to take a look at user fees in the way those are done, simply because, as a guy who lived on a well in this town for 10 years, I think it's ridiculous that I'm paying as much as, you know, some of the new construction on Ledge Road that could be on a well or something like that. So, but no, I am glad we're taking a look at that. This has my support, but I look forward to us looking down the road a little bit and seeing what we can do.
Just for your information, well users can choose to put a meter on their well, and we'll charge them based on the meter. So if they feel that somehow there's only one person, you know, for well users in particular.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Any other comments before we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Number 2?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion to adopt the proposed amendments to an ordinance entitled Flood Damage Prevention.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on this motion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item number 3.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion to approve the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation's proposed acquisition for the rehabilitation of Tomlinson Avenue Bridge and authorize the town manager to execute all applicable documents.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 4?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion to waive the bid process and award bid number 2020-04 Robertson Airport Runway Repair to Santoro, Inc., Newington, Connecticut, in the amount of $19,375.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just want to point out that the bid ordinance requires that we get 3 quotes with regards to anything up to $25,000. So we weren't, under the ordinance, we weren't required to go out to competitive bidding. It's just that given the timeline for the winter months and that this is a relatively specialized type of crack sealing, that you know, we felt that was, and we felt that the prices were competitive as they stood anyhow, that that was the reason why we're asking for a waiving of the bid process. But it did not require us to go out to competitive bid or advertise for bid, just seek 3 quotes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Number 5?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion to approve the tax refunds is listed on the addendum.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay. Any other discussions of interest, Mr. Lee?
I do not have any.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I believe it was during the summer when we were awarding the contract for the recycling. I know we sort of talked in an informal manner about maybe asking our recycling committee to do a public relations campaign. For example, re-educating people on what you recycle and what shouldn't be put into recycling, because the things that are not supposed to be there are ending up costing us money, more money as well. And any other tips that they could do that might possibly help us in the costs that we are facing for recycling. So just maybe that's something we can put on for the next meeting or two to
Sure,
talk
to have
about,
them
yeah.
come and,
Yeah.
and prepare something, if they're available. Is that possible?
Yes, I know that they met with Mark Bobman, and he's from, he's a staff person for, you know, the Bristol Resource Facility and recycling as well. So we can check with the chair to see if they have anything
Any thoughts?
to recommend, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be worth it. I'm not
Well-
saying it's going to turn it around completely, but
Sure.
It could help.
Well, our recycling has changed dramatically over the past year in terms of costs and related to the fact that people do put things in there that shouldn't be,
That's
and
a
that
real fact.
prevents us from getting the best value. So I think it's worthwhile. So at their convenience, Robert, whenever they're free.
Will do.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Anything else? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Motion to move into executive session for town manager evaluation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. We'll take a few minutes.